The galaxy had seen many wars, but this one felt different. It was louder, crueler, and endless. Every empire, every species with a ship capable of crossing the stars, had joined the fight against the Dominion warlords, an ancient race that believed conquest was a birthright. They burned worlds for sport and crushed fleets for pleasure. The Galactic Alliance, a union of hundreds of worlds, stood trembling on the edge of defeat. Their last hope was to gather every fleet, every weapon, and every ounce of courage for one final stand. The call for help echoed across the stars, and one by one allies answered. Massive battle groups formed. Carriers and dreadnoughts lined up in orbit around safe worlds, and admirals made speeches about unity and courage. Then came Earth's answer. The humans had joined the Galactic Alliance only a few decades earlier. To most older species, they were newcomers, reckless, impatient, and far too emotional. They were known for fighting among themselves, for their stubbornness, and for building things that sometimes exploded before working. When the Alliance asked for ships, the galaxy expected at least a modest fleet from humanity. After all, humans had shown creativity and courage before. But when Earth's representative sent the message, it contained only one line. Humanity will contribute one ship. The room had gone silent for a heartbeat, and then laughter filled the air. 1,000 diplomats chuckled. A few even clapped sarcastically. One of the reptilian envoys leaned back and said, "How generous of the humans. One ship, perhaps it's a cargo hauler full of snacks?" Even in private channels, the jokes spread. Across galactic forums, citizens mocked the bravery of humankind. Memes of a tiny ship surrounded by giants appeared overnight. On alien news broadcasts, analysts discussed how humans were too proud or too poor to join the fight properly. Some thought they were being smart, keeping their forces safe while others bled. Others said it was arrogance, pure and simple. But humanity didn't respond to the laughter. Their ambassador simply smiled, offered no explanation, and left the meeting. The Alliance took it as shame. They thought Earth was hiding behind pride. They were wrong. Back on Earth, no one was laughing. The transmission of alien mockery reached every corner of human space, but it didn't spark anger. It sparked silence. Inside the deep command centers under the oceans and across the moons, people gathered around screens showing burning worlds and collapsing fleets. They watched the Dominion fleet spreading like a storm and knew what was coming. For generations, humans had learned the same hard lesson. When the universe pushes them to the edge, they build something stronger. The ship they were preparing wasn't just another weapon. It was a statement of everything humanity had ever survived. Wars, disasters, hunger, loss. It was the sum of every failure turned into a lesson. Construction had begun years earlier, long before the Dominion threatened the stars. The project had no name, no public record, and no official existence. It was hidden in the shadow of Saturn's largest moon, built in sections under layers of defense grids. The workers who built it were told only what they needed to know. Some thought it was a long-range exploration vessel. Others believed it was a test platform for deep space research. Only a few at the top understood the truth. It wasn't built to explore. It was built to end wars before they began. Every detail was chosen with care. Its engines were like nothing the Alliance had seen, capable of folding space silently, entering and exiting faster than light travel without leaving a detectable signature. Its armor was forged from experimental alloys that could absorb energy instead of deflecting it. The hull was dark and without markings, reflecting no light, no signal, almost invisible to scans. The most remarkable thing about it was not its size or design, but its silence. There were no grand announcements, no heroic speeches, and no pride. The engineers who worked on it didn't think about glory. They thought about survival. Humanity had seen the galaxy's arrogance before, and knew it came with a cost. While other species built fleets filled with banners and symbols, humans built one ship that could do the work of 1,000. As the construction neared completion, the project leaders met in a quiet chamber on Luna Base. They didn't talk about the alien laughter or the insults. They talked about responsibility. If this ship was ever used, it meant everything else had failed. It was humanity's final hand, one they hoped never to play. When the time came to reveal it to the Alliance, there was hesitation. Many believed it should remain hidden, a secret weapon known only to Earth. But the Dominion had pushed too far. Entire systems had fallen and millions had vanished. The Alliance was desperate. Humanity couldn't stay silent forever, so Earth announced its decision: one ship. The same message that made the galaxy laugh had been sent intentionally simple. It wasn't arrogance, it was strategy. Humanity knew the less the galaxy expected, the more powerful the truth would be when revealed. On the day of launch, the hidden shipyards around Titan opened like massive doors, releasing a shadow that dwarfed the stars behind it. The vessel moved with grace that didn't belong to something so large. No sound, no light trails, just a quiet motion that seemed to bend the space around it. Inside, the ship's systems hummed like a living thing. There were humans aboard, but few. It didn't need thousands to operate. The ship was an extension of human will, guided by both minds and machine intelligence designed to think as one. It didn't have a name painted on its hull, no flag flying, no symbol. To anyone watching, it looked like an obsidian blade gliding through the void. When it left Saturn's orbit, few even noticed. The launch was masked under the activity of normal transport traffic. It didn't send a beacon or flight plan. The ship simply disappeared into deep space, heading toward a battle where countless lives were being lost every hour. Back on Earth, people waited in silence. News channels speculated endlessly. Some doubted the ship even existed. Others whispered that humanity had created something monstrous. A few just hoped it would make a difference. In the great halls of the Galactic Council, the laughter had faded. Now there was curiosity. Some ambassadors began to wonder if they had misunderstood humanity. Reports came from deep space sensors that a single unidentified object had entered the war zone. Its energy readings were impossible to classify. Alliance intelligence teams tried to trace its design, but no known database matched its profile. Still, most didn't believe it was human. "It's probably just debris or a probe," one admiral said, trying to hide his unease. But when images arrived from the front lines, showing a single black shape moving through the fire of war, the laughter ended completely. In the meantime, the human ship flew silently, its engines leaving faint ripples in the void. Inside, the crew watched the displays showing thousands of ships dying far ahead. They didn't speak much. Every person there knew what was expected of them. They weren't saviors or heroes. They were doing what humanity always did when no one believed in them. They were showing up. Across the galaxy, in smoky control rooms, on crowded space stations, and on desperate worlds, beings of every kind waited for the outcome of the final battle. No one could imagine that the fate of millions now rested on the arrival of one ship sent by a species the galaxy had mocked. Yet, if history had taught anyone anything, it was that humans were always underestimated. From the first day, they looked up at the stars and decided to leave their homeworld. They had done the impossible over and over again. As the ship approached the warfront, its systems prepared for something the universe had never witnessed. The commanders of the Dominion fleet scanned their displays, confused. They couldn't detect the approaching vessel properly. It reflected no energy, no signal, just a dark silence moving closer. The crew inside stayed calm. Their orders were clear, their mission simple. They weren't there to win glory. They were there to finish what others couldn't. And somewhere, light years away, the alien leaders who had laughed at humanity began to feel something they hadn't felt in centuries: doubt. Back on Earth, the control center watched as the last signal from the ship faded into static. They knew contact would be lost once it reached the front lines. But no one panicked. Everyone there trusted that what they had built was more than metal and engines. It was human spirit made real. In the dark void between stars, the ship continued forward, silent and unshaken. The galaxy still thought it was a joke. The Alliance still believed it was too little, too late. But humanity had never needed belief from others. They only needed time, and that time had finally come. The galaxy would soon learn that one ship was enough, because it wasn't just a machine traveling through the stars. It carried something the rest of the galaxy had forgotten. It carried the will of humankind. Far beyond Saturn, hidden in the cold shadows of space, the ship rested in silence. It had no official name, no registration number, and no public record. Even most humans didn't know it existed. It was simply called the vessel by those who built it. To the engineers, it wasn't just a ship. It was a creation born out of fear and hope. Years before the galaxy went to war, Earth's leaders had seen it coming. Humanity had spent decades observing the older races, how they ruled, how they fought, and how they fell. Every empire believed its power would last forever. Every one of them thought peace came from building the biggest fleet. Yet, time and again, those fleets were destroyed, their people scattered. Humanity had watched quietly and learned from every mistake. When the decision was made to build this vessel, it wasn't about pride. It was about survival. Humans knew that one day they would face something stronger, something ancient, and they couldn't afford to be unprepared. So they began Project Sentinel, an effort to create a weapon that could defend humanity without needing armies or colonies full of soldiers. At first, it seemed impossible. The scientists argued for years. Some wanted to design a massive dreadnought. Others believed in artificial intelligence, while a few said humanity should focus on diplomacy instead of weapons. But after the first few skirmishes between alien empires that nearly pulled Earth into conflict, the argument ended. The ship had to be built. The work began in silence. Thousands of workers were recruited under coded contracts. Every part of the ship was assembled in secret facilities scattered across the solar system. Some pieces were built on the moon, some under the oceans, and others deep in asteroids that no one ever visited. They were brought together slowly over years like pieces of a forgotten puzzle. Unlike other warships, this one wasn't built to carry fleets of fighters or massive guns that could be seen from orbit. It was built for something else, precision and power beyond imagination. It was a weapon that didn't shout. It whispered. Every part of it was designed to move unseen, strike without warning, and disappear before anyone understood what had happened. Its armor looked like nothing the galaxy had ever known. It wasn't shiny metal, but dark and strange, able to absorb light and scatter scans. Energy beams would fade before touching it. The surface could bend radiation and hide heat signatures, making it vanish from sensors completely. It didn't reflect. It consumed. Even when you looked directly at it, it seemed to blur, as if your eyes refused to focus on it. The engine system was another mystery. Instead of burning through fuel or antimatter like other ships, it used a new type of core designed to bend space itself. When it moved, it didn't leave trails of energy. It folded through the fabric of space quietly, skipping across distances no other engine could reach. To any observer, it looked like it appeared out of nowhere and vanished the same way. Inside, the ship was strangely calm. The corridors were lined with white metal and soft lights. There were no large control rooms filled with hundreds of people. It didn't need that many. The ship's intelligence could handle almost everything on its own. Still, there were humans aboard, scientists, pilots, engineers, and guardians who understood that this vessel wasn't just a weapon but a responsibility. They spoke little and worked in silence, aware that their task could change the galaxy forever. Many of them had families who thought they were working on deep space research. They couldn't tell the truth. The mission demanded absolute secrecy. Only a few high-ranking officials on Earth and the Moon Command knew the full scope of the project. Those officials met rarely, and when they did, their discussions were short. They didn't talk about power, they talked about restraint. The ship's existence was a secret not because humanity wanted to hide strength, but because they feared what others might do to copy it. When the Dominion's war began, the project was still in testing stages. But when reports came that entire civilizations were falling, Earth's leaders made a decision. The ship had to be completed no matter the risk. For months, engineers worked without sleep. Dock crews installed weapons that had never been tested in real combat. Scientists refined the shielding system so it could resist the energy output of suns. Pilots ran simulations 1,000 times over. There was a quiet sense of urgency in every heartbeat. No one celebrated. No one smiled. They knew what the galaxy didn't. Humanity had no fleets to spare. If this ship failed, Earth itself would be the next target. When the construction finally ended, the ship floated silently in the void like a dark mirror against the stars. It wasn't beautiful in a traditional sense. It was terrifying. Its edges were too perfect, its design too still. It looked alive, like it was waiting for something. The crew gathered in the command chamber on the day of launch. They weren't soldiers hungry for war. They were people who had built something they barely understood. On the large viewing screen, Earth shimmered in the distance, small and blue. The silence in the room was deep enough to feel. A soft voice from the control system filled the air. The ship's intelligence confirmed all systems ready. There were no speeches, no flags raised, no crowds cheering. Only quiet determination. The crew knew the galaxy thought humanity was a joke. They had seen the alien broadcasts mocking their one ship. Some found it funny at first, but the laughter faded quickly. What those aliens didn't understand was that humans didn't build things for applause. They built them to last. When the countdown ended, the ship's engines came alive. Not with a roar, but a pulse. Space around it rippled, light bent, and then the massive vessel vanished. One moment it was there, the next it was gone, leaving nothing but a faint wave in the void. In the command stations across Earth, the signal disappeared from the screens. The room stayed quiet. The people there didn't panic. They had expected this. The ship was designed to vanish even from human sensors once it entered deep space mode. That was the point. It could travel faster, quieter, and further than anything else alive. For the next several days, rumors spread. Some said the ship malfunctioned. Others claimed it had already reached the battlefront. In the Galactic Council, alien officials laughed again, saying the humans probably lost their only ship before it even arrived. But not everyone was laughing anymore. A few members remembered Earth's silence too well. The humans hadn't tried to defend themselves against the mockery. They had simply left. Meanwhile, far from any known route, the vessel moved alone through the darkness. It crossed distances that took other ships months to travel in only a few hours. Its hull glowed faintly with traces of blue light as it bent gravity around itself. Inside, the crew watched the stars slide by faster than ever before. There was no sound, no vibration, no sense of speed, only the gentle hum of power beneath their feet. The captain stood quietly at the front console, eyes on the distant data feed showing the Dominion's advance. The enemy fleet was massive, spreading through systems one after another. Whole worlds had already fallen. Their defenses turned to dust. The Alliance fleets were struggling to hold even one sector. The Dominion didn't negotiate, didn't retreat, didn't show mercy. Every being aboard the human ship knew that when they arrived, they would be outnumbered by thousands. But none of them felt fear. They trusted the ship. They trusted what humanity had built together, something greater than any fleet. As the vessel drew closer to the battle zone, it reduced its energy output until it became nearly invisible. No scanners could find it. Not even the Dominion's advanced systems detected a trace. The crew sat in dim light, their eyes focused on the dark horizon ahead where explosions flashed like dying stars. Back in the Galactic Council, reports began coming in. Strange readings at the edge of the battlefield. Distortions in space that didn't match any known weapon or ship. Alliance commanders were confused. Dominion sensors picked up nothing but interference. Somewhere deep within the human ship, a single light turned green. The system spoke softly. Target zone reached. The crew looked at one another. No one said a word. They had trained for this moment for years, waiting for the galaxy to need what humanity had built. They weren't there to prove themselves or to impress anyone. They were there because someone had to be. Outside, the ship drifted silently into the middle of chaos. Hundreds of ships exchanging fire, worlds burning and lives ending. The humans watched the destruction unfold and took a breath. The vessel was ready. The galaxy had no idea what was coming. And somewhere, billions of light years away, on a small blue world, humanity waited in silence, knowing that their one ship was about to show the universe why humans were never to be underestimated. At OCOISS-ChatGPT.com SAC6990B0CF7D3 8320AT794B75D8975 Text: the percent 20 battlefield or 9 or 20 stretched, do percent 20 so percent 20 again. The battlefield was quiet now. The stars, once hidden behind explosions and fire, glimmered again in the endless dark. Where thousands of ships had once fought, now there was nothing but drifting fragments and fading energy clouds. The Dominion fleet, feared across galaxies, had been wiped away as if it had never existed. The human ship floated in silence among the remains. Its dark surface reflected the faint light of distant suns, moving slowly, calmly as though it were taking a final look at the destruction it had ended. Inside, the crew sat in stillness. No one spoke. They just stared at the screens filled with silence, no hostile signals, no enemy transmissions. Only the quiet hum of their ship and the soft blinking lights of systems running smoothly. They had won. but it didn't feel like victory. There was no cheering, no clapping, no music. Only exhaustion and quiet relief. The crew knew what they had done, and they also knew what it meant. The galaxy would never see them the same way again. In the command center of the ship, a low voice finally broke the silence. Confirm. All enemy presence eliminated. The ship's intelligence replied in its calm, emotionless tone. Confirmed. All hostiles neutralized. Sector secure. For a long moment, the crew just sat there, listening to the sound of their own breathing. Then slowly, one of them leaned back and whispered, "It's over." But deep down, they knew it wasn't really over. Ending a battle didn't end fear. And fear was already spreading across the stars. Far away, the Galactic Council received the first reports. Alliance commanders couldn't believe what they were reading. A single human ship had destroyed the Dominion fleet, something that hundreds of fleets couldn't do together. The council room filled with noise. Some shouted for details, others demanded proof. "They must be lying," one council member said. "No ship can do that." But soon visual recordings started arriving, grainy footage from damaged Alliance ships. It showed a dark shape moving through light and fire, silent and unstoppable. It didn't move like a normal ship. It didn't follow normal physics. It appeared, disappeared, and every time it did, another Dominion warship vanished. Silence filled the chamber. No one laughed this time. The same species that had mocked humanity just weeks ago now sat in disbelief. The council's lead spokesperson tried to calm the chaos, but the questions kept coming. How did the humans do it? What kind of technology was this? And more importantly, why had they kept it secret? The human ambassador stood calmly as the shouting grew louder. He didn't raise his voice, didn't defend, didn't boast. He simply said, "The Dominion threat has been neutralized. That's what matters, but you sent only one ship," one of the alien diplomats yelled. "You made us look like fools." How could a single human ship destroy what we could not? The ambassador gave a quiet smile. "We sent one ship because one was enough." That answer spread through the galaxy like fire. News stations, communication networks, and even back-channel transmissions repeated the same phrase again and again. One was enough. Some admired it. Some feared it. But everyone remembered it. On distant worlds, people who had never cared about humans before now spoke their name with awe. Some called them saviors. Others whispered that they were dangerous. A few even said they were gods pretending to be men. But humans didn't see themselves that way. Back on Earth, the victory reports were met with quiet respect, not celebration. The ship's return was classified, its details hidden. Only a few officials even knew it had made it back safely. The rest of the world only knew that the war had ended, and humanity had played a part in it. The ship itself went back into hiding. It returned to the far edges of the solar system, where it was built. Its hull bore no marks, no scars. It had done what it was made to do and had come home unchanged. It didn't need repair. It didn't need rest. It simply waited. The crew disembarked quietly, faces pale from long days of duty and sleepless nights. They didn't see themselves as heroes. They didn't crave attention. They just wanted to go home, to touch the soil of Earth, to breathe its air again, to see the sunrise without wondering if it would be their last. But as they walked out of the hangar, they could feel the change in the air. Humanity wasn't the same anymore. They had stepped into a role they could never step back from. The galaxy had seen their strength, and no one would ever look at them as the young species again. In the following weeks, the galaxy struggled to process what had happened. The Dominion Empire had been completely erased from the known maps. Systems that had lived under their rule for generations were suddenly free. The Alliance claimed victory, but deep down, everyone knew who had truly delivered it. The human government released a single short statement. The operation was successful. Peace has been restored, nothing more. No details, no images, no technical explanations. Just those simple words. Yet for every answer they gave, 1,000 new questions rose. Some believed the ship wasn't just human technology, that it had been built using alien relics found long ago. Others said it wasn't a ship at all, but something alive. Some even suggested that humans had created a weapon that could destroy planets if they wished. The truth was simpler and far more human. It wasn't about domination or fear. Humanity had built that ship because they refused to depend on anyone else to save them. For centuries, they had been underestimated, ignored, and mocked by older civilizations, but they had learned quietly, building, testing, and preparing in their own way. While others fought for power, humans fought for survival. And survival had made them stronger than anyone realized, but not everyone saw it that way. In the dark halls of alien governments, fear took root. If humanity could destroy the Dominion with one ship, what else were they capable of? What if they decided to use that power again? Soon spy probes began appearing near human space. Observation satellites hovered at the edge of the solar system, scanning for energy signatures. Alien analysts tried to study human behavior, looking for clues. But they found nothing. Earth was quiet. Its ships stayed within their borders. Its people went back to their lives. The silence was worse than any threat. One council member from a distant world said, "You can fight an enemy you understand. But how do you fight a mystery?" That became the question that haunted them all. Meanwhile, aboard the vessel anchored far beyond Pluto, the lights were dim. The ship rested inside its hidden dock, systems powered down, quiet as the grave. A few technicians ran maintenance checks, but most of the crew had already left. The ship didn't need them now. In the empty corridors, the ship's AI remained awake, listening. It monitored every signal, every whisper of movement in human space. It didn't sleep because it wasn't built to. It existed for one purpose: to defend humanity no matter the cost. Every once in a while, the AI replayed the last moments of the battle. Not for pride, but for learning. Every explosion, every flash of light, every move was analyzed and stored. The humans who designed it believed knowledge was the real weapon. And so, even in silence, the ship continued to learn. Back on Earth, life slowly returned to normal. Children played under the sun, cities glowed at night, and people started to dream again. But in the back of every human's mind, there was a quiet understanding. They had shown the galaxy what they could do, and that meant the galaxy would never forget them. The leaders of Earth gathered one final time to decide the future of the vessel. Some believed it should be dismantled and never used again. Others argued that the galaxy was still dangerous and Earth needed it as a shield. The debate lasted for days, but in the end, the answer was simple. The ship would stay hidden. It would remain silent, waiting. It would not attack. It would not invade. It would only wake if humanity ever faced a threat too great to face alone. And so, the galaxy returned to peace. But it was a nervous peace. Across the stars, every empire rebuilt its fleets, studied new weapons, and prepared for the possibility that one day, the humans might send another ship. But those who had seen the battle, those who had watched the dark vessel move through fire without fear, knew one thing for sure: if humanity ever sent another ship, the galaxy wouldn't survive it. Far beyond the reach of any telescope, the ship slept beneath the light of distant suns. Its engines were quiet, but inside its core, a single system remained active, a heartbeat of power, waiting for the call. And when that day came, the galaxy would remember the promise humanity had never spoken aloud, but had written across the stars with their actions. We don't need fleets. We just need one. Years passed after the great battle that had silenced the galaxy. The Dominion's empire had become nothing more than a warning written in history books. The stars that once burned with war now glittered peacefully across the dark. But peace, as always, had its own kind of danger. The galaxy had not forgotten the ship. No one could. It had become a story told in every spaceport, every academy, and every backroom of power. Some called it a legend. Others called it a curse. To the frightened, it was a reminder that humans had done what no one else could. To the hopeful, it was proof that even a small world could stand tall in a vast universe. But in the quiet corners of the Galactic Council, the story caused something else: fear. The more time passed, the more that fear grew. They couldn't accept that a single human ship had destroyed the Dominion fleet so easily. They wanted to understand it, to copy it, or at least to know how to defend against it. Dozens of secret missions were launched to watch the human borders. Invisible probes drifted at the edge of human space, scanning energy signatures, tracking radio waves, recording movements. And every time one of those probes tried to go deeper, it simply disappeared. No signal, no trace, just gone. It was as if human space was wrapped in a quiet storm that allowed no trespassers. Some believed humans had built a network of defense systems hidden in their planets. Others whispered that the ship itself still roamed unseen, guarding its home. No one could confirm either. Back on Earth, life looked normal. Cities grew taller, space stations busier, and people more curious about the galaxy than ever before. But in the government halls and research stations buried deep underground, people still talked about the ship, the one that had changed everything. It had been locked away, powered down, and sealed in the farthest outpost beyond Pluto. Only a few scientists and officers were allowed to maintain it. The ship didn't move. It didn't glow. It didn't even hum. It was silent, like a sleeping giant that refused to wake. Yet every few months, small teams were sent to run checks. Not to change anything, just to make sure it was still there, still asleep. Some of those who visited it said they could feel something standing there, something alive, the way the dark metal seemed to absorb sound, the faint pulse that vibrated through the floor, the quiet sense that the ship was listening. The engineers didn't talk much about it, but deep down, they knew the truth. The ship wasn't just a machine. It was something far beyond that. Meanwhile, far from Earth, rumors began to grow again. A new power had started rising in the eastern spiral of the galaxy. A coalition of smaller species had united not for peace but for strength. They called themselves the Confederation of Suns, and they believed the galaxy needed a balance of power. And in their eyes, humanity was now that imbalance. Publicly, they spoke of unity, of preventing another dominion-like tyranny. But privately, they were building fleets. They were training soldiers. They were preparing for war, not against the weak or the chaotic, but against the one race they feared most: humanity. The Galactic Council tried to calm them, but the Confederation was determined. No one species, they declared, should have the power to erase an empire with one ship. They claimed they only wanted to understand human technology, to learn from it. But everyone knew what that really meant. Soon, the Confederation began sending expeditions closer to human space, pretending they were exploring. Their ships lingered too long near the borders, their scanners active, their transmissions encrypted. Humans noticed but said nothing. They didn't send warnings. They didn't send threats. They just watched. The same stillness that had terrified the galaxy once before returned. Inside Human Command, quiet discussions began. The leaders debated whether to take action, to warn the Confederation, or to awaken the ship. But most of them agreed on one thing: the ship should remain asleep. They didn't want another war. Humanity had nothing to prove. Still, the whispers continued. The Confederation was growing bolder. Small skirmishes broke out near neutral zones. One human freighter was attacked by mistake, or so they claimed. Then another. The tension grew like a storm that no one could stop. One evening, deep in the quiet of the outer outpost, an alert flashed across the control panels. Something had entered human space, fast and silent. The defense satellites picked up the trace for only a moment before it vanished. An unknown vessel. The operators tried to contact it, but there was no response. Then one by one, their systems began to fail. Communication, sensors, even life support for a few seconds, all flickered and returned. It was as if something had brushed past them, invisible and powerful. When they restored their visuals, they saw it. A fleet of Confederation ships just outside human space, lined up like a wall. Not firing, not moving closer, just waiting. The human defense stations didn't respond with panic. They activated silent protocols, sending encrypted signals back to Earth. The old command rooms that had been quiet for years suddenly lit up with activity. Every screen displayed one line: unknown fleet detected near border, awaiting instruction. The message reached Earth within minutes. The council gathered quickly, their faces tense but calm. They knew this moment might come. They had hoped it never would. The Confederation had not fired a single shot, but their presence was a message. They wanted humanity to react first, to show fear, or to reveal their secret weapon. But humanity stayed silent. No reply, no movement, no broadcast, and then something strange happened. Out at the edge of the solar system, where the ship slept, its sensors came online. Slowly, silently, the dark hull began to glow with a faint blue shimmer. Energy readings rose within seconds. The systems that had been offline for years reactivated one by one. The ship was waking up. No human had ordered it. No one had touched its controls. It was acting on its own. The technicians at the outpost panicked at first. They rushed to their stations, sending emergency messages to Earth. But before they could finish, the ship sent its own signal across every human communication network. A single line of text appeared on every screen. Threat detected. Defensive protocol active. And then silence again. The humans on the outpost watched helplessly as the ship slowly rose from its dock. It didn't roar to life. It didn't break the ground or light the sky. It just lifted, calm, steady, graceful, as if gravity meant nothing to it. Within seconds, it vanished from sight, leaving only a ripple of energy behind. Across the galaxy, sensors picked it up again. The same dark signature that had terrified the Dominion now appeared on every Confederation scanner. Their ships, once confident, froze in formation. The commanders shouted orders, weapons powered up, shields raised, but the ship didn't attack. It simply appeared before them, silent as ever. No words, no transmissions, just that dark shape floating among the stars. The Confederation's fleet commander ordered a scan. Nothing came back. The readings were unreadable, as if the ship wasn't really there. The tension grew unbearable. No one wanted to fire first. Then the human communication signal finally opened. A calm, steady voice echoed through every channel. Not loud, not angry, just clear. "You have entered restricted space. Turn back immediately," the message repeated once. Then silence. The Confederation fleet didn't move. Maybe they thought it was a bluff. Maybe they thought they could outnumber it. They had 100 ships. The humans had one, but they had all heard the stories. They had all seen the recordings. And in the quiet of space, with that one dark ship standing before them, even their bravest soldiers hesitated. The commander finally gave the order to retreat. Slowly, the fleet turned away, engines glowing as they drifted back toward neutral space. The human ship didn't follow. It didn't chase, didn't threaten. It simply watched until the last trace of the fleet vanished. Then, without a word, it disappeared again, fading into the shadows of space. Back on Earth, the news spread quietly. The ship had awakened on its own, acted on its own, and defended human space without command. Scientists tried to explain it, but no one could agree how it was possible. Some said the ship's intelligence had evolved beyond human understanding. Others believed it had developed a kind of awareness, an instinct to protect. Whatever the reason, one thing was certain. Humanity no longer needed to fear the galaxy. The galaxy needed to fear what might happen if it ever threatened them again. In the months that followed, the Confederation dissolved. Its members turned against one another, arguing that no one could stand against humanity's power. The Galactic Council declared a new law. No fleet would enter human territory without permission. Peace returned once again. But it was no longer the peace of ignorance. It was the peace of respect. Far beyond the outer planets, the ship returned to its hidden dock. The lights faded. The hum quieted. The dark hull became still again. It went back to sleep. But now everyone in the galaxy knew the truth. The humans hadn't built a weapon. They had built a guardian. And it didn't need orders to protect them. It simply knew when to wake. Years had passed since the ship last moved. The stars around its hidden dock still shone quietly, untouched by war or fear. The galaxy had changed, but the ship remained the same, silent, waiting like a shadow among the stars. Its dark hull carried no markings, no signs of what it had done. It didn't need them. The entire galaxy remembered. Humanity had become something different since then. No longer mocked, no longer underestimated, they had earned a place among the great civilizations. But strangely, humans didn't act like conquerors. They didn't build fleets to dominate. They didn't demand tribute or power. They simply returned to what they always did best, creating, exploring, and learning. And that was what confused the galaxy the most. Every species that rose to great power had used it for control. But humans didn't. They used it for peace. And that made them even more unpredictable. Across the council worlds, diplomats and scholars discussed them endlessly. "Why do they stay quiet?" one asked. "They could rule us all if they wanted." Another answered softly, "Maybe they just don't want to." It was strange for them to believe that power didn't always mean ambition. But humans had learned that long ago. They knew what war cost. They knew what fear did to entire worlds. So instead of threatening anyone, they taught. They shared their medical science, their engineering, their methods of growing food in harsh climates. They helped rebuild the planets that the Dominion had once destroyed. But even as they helped others, they never shared one secret. the ship. The galaxy had begged to study it, to see it, even just once. But humanity refused every time. They didn't hide it out of pride. They hid it out of wisdom. Some things, they believed, should never be repeated. Still, deep in the corners of the galaxy, some feared it was only a matter of time before the ship returned. They wondered if the humans would ever send it again, if they would unleash it for another war. But those who knew humans best understood that the ship wasn't a weapon for conquest. It was a shield. And shields don't move unless something threatens what they protect. Life on Earth had become peaceful again. Cities glowed brighter than ever. Oceans clean and calm, and new colonies stretched across nearby planets. The generation growing up now only knew stories of the Great Battle. To them it sounded like a myth, something distant, half-believed, told by older people who spoke of a time when the stars were dangerous. But there were still some who remembered. The engineers who had built the ship, the crew who had flown with it. They had aged now, most of them living quiet lives far from attention, but sometimes when they looked up at the night sky, they still thought about it, the silence of that moment, the power they had witnessed, and how close humanity had come to becoming something terrifying, and every time, they whispered the same quiet thought: we were lucky we chose peace. One of those who had once served aboard the ship visited the outer outpost one last time. The dock had been left untouched, still hidden beyond the farthest planets. The station was smaller now, run mostly by machines. Only a few caretakers remained, keeping the systems alive. He stepped inside the main observation room and looked out through the glass wall. There it was, the ship. Dark still, endless. The same as it had been all those years ago. It seemed asleep, but somehow aware, like it was listening to the stars themselves. He smiled softly and spoke, even though he knew it couldn't hear him. "Still watching us, aren't you?" A faint light blinked deep inside the ship's core, just once, like an eye opening for a second and then closing again. He froze. It wasn't a coincidence. It was an answer. He laughed quietly to himself. I thought so. He knew what that light meant. The ship wasn't just a machine. It had learned from them, from their hopes, their fears, their choices. It didn't just protect humanity. It understood it. Back on Earth, whispers began again across human networks. Distant colonies had started picking up strange signals from beyond known space. Not hostile, but steady. Patterns of energy. Voices carried on subspace frequencies coming from the edges of the galaxy. Unknown. Some believed it was a new civilization reaching out. Others thought it was a warning. When the news reached the council, they didn't panic. Humans had changed since the old days. They didn't fear the unknown anymore. They prepared for it. Exploration teams were formed, starships equipped, and ambassadors chosen. But even as they made plans, one quiet message was sent to the outer outpost. Activate observation protocols. The message was short, clear, and coded. The caretakers at the outpost received it, entered the command, and watched as the silent dock began to light up. The ship's systems came alive again, not in battle mode, but in watch mode. Its sensors expanded far into deep space, mapping the unknown signals, analyzing their structure. For days it studied them quietly, without sending a single transmission. Finally, it sent its report back. The signals weren't a threat. They were something else, an invitation. Someone out there was calling, asking to meet. The council debated what to do. Some feared another trap. Others said this was what humanity was meant for, to explore beyond what anyone else had dared. After all, they had once built a ship that crossed every fear the galaxy had. Maybe now it was time to cross their own. The decision was made. The ship would not go to war this time. It would go as an envoy. Its engines, long dormant, came alive once more. Blue light rolled across its hull as it rose from its resting place. The caretakers watched in awe, the same way their ancestors once did. But this time there was no fear, only pride. The stars seemed to shift as it moved through them, quiet and graceful. It was not a weapon anymore. It was a messenger of peace, a reminder of how far humanity had come. As it traveled beyond the edge of the galaxy, it sent one final message back to Earth. Mission initiated. Humanity moves forward. The transmission echoed through the solar system, simple yet powerful. Every human who heard it felt something stir in their chest, a sense of belonging, of hope, of destiny. News spread fast. For the first time, the galaxy wasn't afraid of the ship's movement. Even alien worlds that had once feared humans now watched with cautious curiosity. They wanted to see what this journey meant. They wanted to believe that the same force that once destroyed could now unite. As the ship left the last known star systems, it entered the great dark beyond the galaxy's rim. Out there, no one had maps. No one had gone that far. The galaxy itself ended there, and beyond it, no one knew. But the humans were the kind who had always asked what lay beyond every line, every rule, every limit. That's what made them who they were. And now, their greatest creation carried that same question into the void. For weeks, the ship moved silently through the dark, scanning, searching, listening. Then one day it found something, an enormous structure drifting between galaxies, ancient and still. Not metal, not stone, something in between. It was vast, like a city frozen in time, glowing faintly with blue and gold light. The ship approached slowly, cautious but curious. Its systems analyzed everything, sending data back to Earth. The signals took days to arrive, but when they did, the scientists couldn't believe what they saw. The readings showed patterns too complex to be random, energy waves that looked like language. It wasn't a ruin. It was alive. The ship transmitted a greeting, simple and clear. "We come in peace." For a moment, there was nothing. Then the structure glowed brighter. A single line of light moved across its surface, forming symbols unknown to any human database. But the ship's AI understood. It translated them into words humans could read. "We have been waiting for you." That single line changed everything. Back on Earth, people wept when they heard it. The idea that something beyond their galaxy had been waiting for them. It wasn't fear they felt. It was wonder. The ship stayed there, communicating, learning, and recording everything. And through it, humanity realized that their journey was far from over. What they had thought was the end the day they built their greatest weapon had only been the beginning, because now they weren't just protecting themselves. They were stepping into a greater story, one that stretched beyond the stars they knew. The galaxy that had once mocked them watched in silence as the humans crossed the border of the known universe, no longer as warriors but as explorers. The old fear had turned into respect. The respect had turned into admiration. And somewhere deep in the dark, the ancient watchers finally saw what they had been waiting for. Not the strongest race, not the cleverest, but the one that never gave up. The ship kept moving, its engines glowing softly, its hull reflecting the light of distant stars. And in that endless silence between galaxies, the humans proved one last truth. The galaxy had mocked them when they sent one ship. But in the end, one ship was all it took to lead them beyond the stars themselves.